Hey, what's up, guys? This is your boy Mace, and I have a very special edition of kind of like a podcast. I'm joined by a good friend of mine, John. He actually watched me growing up when I was just a little boy. He used to coach me for basketball. But I'll leave introductions for John to tell you a little bit about himself.
So I'm wrapping up my PhD right now at University of Oxford doing sociology. I look at social interactions, and I passed my defense. I'm just wrapping up. I got two book projects in the pipeline right now, and I also have some white papers. I started a business, and that teaches that helps millennials and Gen Zs develop soft skills for the workplace.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. Your business is called Azurean, right? So
Yeah.
What exactly are you trying to get out of that?
What I really want to do for Azurean is really help people, because what I found is, there's so many ways to do things nowadays. There's so much information, but science has really told us what's really the best way, most efficient way to get things done. And really, I think one of the main propositions that I have for people is, instead of looking around and you don't know what you can find out there, whether it actually works or not, there's tried and true ways to do things. And with all the noise, I just want to cut through all the noise and tell people, give people, this is the best option that we have right now. We've studied this, the research has proven it, just go do it now, apply it.
Okay. Could you expand a little bit more on the two aspects, like the coaching side and then the consulting side? Like what are people expecting?
Coaching is one-on-one. A lot of it's one-on-one. And what you do in that process is you help the person gain clarity. So we went through a session together before, right?
Yeah.
We sat down, asked questions, and to help you dig deep, dig hard to really uncover your fears, that's usually lying in the we don't want to call it subconscious because it's not exactly subconscious. It's there, right? We can't call it unconscious because we can't prove it's not there. So what we call it is metaconscious. So if you dig a little deeper, you can find it, right? So coaching on a one-on-one situation helps you dig into the metaconscious area and really uncover your fears. And only by shining a light on your fears can you actually encounter it. Can you actually face it forward and tackle it. Right. And so that's so in a one-on-one session, that's what it's like. In a group session, coaching would be more of it's more in this case it's called coaching, but it's more teaching because you can't really dig deep with people. And one thing that we use is psychometrics. So we use the Big Five personality test to really help uncover different aspects of the personality. So personality, a lot of it is nature, right? Nurture is really important as well, but nature is a big part of it. So as a result, we have a lot of what we call biological predispositions. So we have different ways where we lean, like inclinations to which we lean towards, these can be measured by your degree of neuroticism, extroversion, openness, agreeableness, and conscientiousness. That's what it's the closest thing that psychologists have been able to come up with in terms of a consensus. So these things, we uncover these for people, and as a result, it's like staring yourself in a mirror and knowing what your blemishes are and what you can do to fix it. So this is really important. For example, if you're an agreeable person, right? An agreeable person will have a hard time hashing out deals.
Right.
Because they tend to prioritize harmony.
Sorry, when you say agreeable, is that like a yes person, someone who always just says yes to everything?
In a sense, yeah, in a sense, right? So they prioritize harmony over conflict. When you are at a table and you're knocking out a deal with someone, and that person asks for a cut, like asks for a bigger discount. Right? I can't pay for this. Can you go lower? Agreeable people would tend to say, okay, right? And that applies across the board, whether it's negotiating for your wages or at the table where you're negotiating deals, you get a worse deal. Disagreeable people are like, no, screw you. It's like, this is what I want, this is what you want. It's a win-win situation.
Yeah.
Right? Or sometimes really disagreeable people is like, I win, you lose. Right? Donald Trump would be a highly disagreeable person.
Okay.
Right? But he's at the same time he's pretty strategic about things. Sometimes he's not though. So he's hit or miss. And it's also agreeable people tend to get into abusive relationships, right? So they have these. So they get into relationships where they're partnered with someone else who will take advantage of them, right? Someone who's disagreeable, and as a result, they'll tend to fold a lot to the like. So my wife and I, right? I tend to be disagreeable. My wife tends to be more agreeable, and our dynamic is interesting because I'll be like, I want to watch this show, and she'll be like, can we watch this? And I'll be like, no, let's watch this show, and then she'll be like, okay. After like 10 times of that, and it happens it's like that every time, right? But after like 10 times, she'll basically be like, you know what? I'm sick of it. You never listen to me. I'm like, where's this coming from? Like, if you want to watch it that hard, like, not, you just tell me, right? It's like, I told you. It's like, you told me once each time, right? But for her, that's enough. I'm already trying to tell you what I want. Okay. But for me, it's like, I want this. Right. And as a result, you get into like I wouldn't say it's an abusive relationship, but it's a relationship where I tend to get my way and she doesn't get her way. And so, you need to be cognizant of these things so that you can adjust accordingly. It applies at home, it applies to work. So this type of group coaching that's when you disseminate this type of information, and it really helps people. Like, can you imagine if you're a business owner, right? You're a young business owner, you're at the table, and disagreeable people tend to respect other disagreeable people. So if you're able to stand up for yourself, then they'll be like, okay, I can trust this guy. Okay. Disagreeable people tend to not respect agreeable people because they're like, I can walk all over you. Why should I respect you? Right. Right. And that's why the best salespeople and the best leaders tend to have, and the best managers as well, tend to have a disagreeable profile. So when you draw these characteristics out, like, how difficult is it to actually coach someone from being agreeable to slightly more disagreeable? Like, how does that work? Yeah, that's a good question. So essentially, if you want to coach someone from being agreeable to disagreeable, there are mechanisms you need to set in place, right? Practices. So, for example, drawing boundaries. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me, kind of thing, right? Right. You need to draw boundaries. You can't always have people step on you. So at some point, you just gotta say no. And there are always signs of, like, when you're stressed, when you're in a bad situation, you're kind of aware of it, right? You see these patterns happening, especially if you're an agreeable person. You see these patterns. And the key is to recognize these patterns and have mechanisms in place to and just rehearse it, right? Rehearsing is really important. So one thing I coached a youth on is, and she tends to say, go with the flow kind of thing. There are times she wants to say no to, hanging out with friends or, partying or whatever. But she can't say no because her friend asked her, right? So and it's live. It's live, face to face, and she doesn't know how to say no. So one of the things I coached her on is, say, let me think about it. That's much easier than saying no for an agreeable person. Let me think about it, right? And it's not too hard. Let me think about it, and then when you get home, just text. It's so much easier to say no if you text and you're not in that situation, right? You're not in that situation, right? It's not like, there's that pressure where the person's in your face and you gotta, yeah. So that's one good way. Another person, especially if you're a business owner, is if you're a business owner, and so people tend to start businesses because they are, they're specialists. Just say you're a designer. Right. You design. You make beautiful stuff. You're really good with it. You can adjust to your clients' needs. You're a designer, but you might not be a sales, right? And you might be a very agreeable person. So as a result, I would actually coach the person to, hey, you know what? Why don't you hire a salesperson? Like, it's going to be worth it. So one of the clients I worked with, she's a designer, right? Runs a designing firm, and when she was hashing out deals by herself, she was closing at around $3,000 or $3,000 for a certain package. She went out and got a salesperson, and that salesperson was able to close at $7,000 for the same package. Wow! Right? Yeah, and that's the difference. Like, that changes your bottom line so much. And the salesperson gets a commission, gets a cut. Right. But even with that, right? she gets rid of the stress of being at that at that negotiating table, and she gets more money as a result of that. What's not to like about it, right? And just being cognizant of these little things about yourself makes a huge difference.
How important do you feel, especially for the younger generation, to be more aware of these kind of things? Growing up, I never really would have thought to, I mean, even to this day, I would have never thought to just sit down with someone like yourself and get coached or, consult with someone about my problems. And even if I did, it'd literally be scratching the surface. So like, I actually had a chat with Jon for about an hour, about a month ago, and he dug so deep that there would be these long pauses of me just sitting there thinking about the underlying reasons as to my answers, right? And the main question that I wanted to ask was, do you think that the youths today are willing to kind of take that self-reflection to the next level, to open up and be able to allow you to kind of guide them and help them?
It depends on the person, right? It depends on the person, depends on the situation, depends on their upbringing and a lot of things, right? So if a person is well constituted, they've got good habits in place, they've been, pretty successful in life so far doing what they do. So that a lot of times they don't see the need for coaching until they hit an obstacle that they can't overcome. So coaching is not for everyone. It's not like you don't need a coach all the time. Right? That's from my experience. But it's at these bottleneck situations where you're like, you know what, I've been taking on so much, I can't break through this anymore. I need some help. Right? That's when you go to a coach, you dig a little deeper, you uncover what's the problem, what are the fears that's holding you back, right? And you shine a spotlight on it and you address it. So here's an interesting thing. The amygdala, right? That's the part of our brain. That's kind of like the oldest part. People usually call it the lizard brain. Some people call it the limbic system. That's an antiquated term, but it's still kind of useful because like it talks about the emotional part of our brain. But it's the older part of our brain, right? So there's the older part of your brain and then the older part of the brain, which is the neocortex. The older part of your brain, it regulates a lot of the emotions, and it's a quick trigger response. So the amygdala is the quick trigger response. That's where the fight or flight happens. Flight is fear, fight is, excitement, right? So an interesting thing that people don't realize is when you're afraid of something, so procrastination, a major reason for procrastination is fear. Yeah. Right? When you're afraid of something and you're just, dragging your feet like, I don't want to do this, right? If you coach a person and tell them that, you know what, you could actually just turn that fear, just visualize, turning that fear into excitement. It's literally in the same part of your brain, and it's so easy for you to turn it into excitement so that you can charge at that problem and face it. I just want to ask the audience right now, think of something that you're afraid of right now, that you're dragging your feet on, and just and close your eyes and just visualize it. Visualize that fear. What are you afraid of? Are you afraid of failing? Are you afraid of other people judging you? Right? And then turn that into excitement. What's the potential? What's the payout? Right? If you do this and you do it well, right? What are you going to get out of it? That turns into excitement. And use that excitement to propel yourself forward.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's crazy how you say that, because there's a lot of similarities like that when we go gymming. So over the last 3 years?
3 years, yeah.
Over the last 3 years, Jon and I have been meeting up every time either I'm here in Toronto or he comes back to Hong Kong, and we would just work out together. And prior to that, I was doing my own thing with fitness, and Jon started out working out on his own as well. Jon, watched me grow up. I was playing basketball, scrawny kid, and then over the last couple of years,
not scrawny anymore, man.
After the last couple of years, I've been working out a lot, and so Jon kind of inquired me and asked me a little bit like, what do I do and stuff. So we started working out, and we kind of don't really talk about the theories behind exactly what you consult on or coach on, but a lot of the same kind of understanding and mental training, if you will, is kind of the same. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a lot of stuff that happens in when you hit the gym or when you work, a lot of this type of work ethic, this type of mentality, this type of mindset, it just translates across the board, right? So yeah, it is the same.
Would you be able to shed a little bit of light with the connection between, someone who wants to better themselves? Like obviously they come to you to get coached or whatever to bring themselves up a little bit. Could you share a little bit about the coaching aspect and kind of like talk a little bit about fitness and how that relates to an individual's growth and in that sense?
So how about I tell you my story first, right?
Yeah,
Because I
that'd
think
be
this is best illustrated through a story. So I sent you a photo, right?
Yeah.
So, if I haven't sent it, like I sent it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I sent you the photo, and I was like, that's me at the beach in Hong Kong, and I was like so out of shape. That was like before I started working out,
Right.
And at that time, and that was when that wasn't the worst situation. I was like slightly better already. When I was in my worst situation, I was 28 at that time. I'm now 35, 36 this year.
Okay.
Right, 20 at that time. My second daughter was just born. At that time, I was applying for my PhD. I was applying for. I was department head at my school in South Korea. I was stressed, working a lot, and basically at that time I put too much on my plate, and I was out of shape. I exercised. I played ball once a week, but every time I played ball, I had felt like my feet were killing me because plantar fasciitis or something. And at that time I was doing an international conference, and I went on that conference, and I started having these red spots on my waist, and I was like, okay, grit and grind. Just grind through it, right? Like I do for everything at that time. Staying up to 3 to 4, eating like whatever I wanted. As long as I'm hungry, I'll just eat it. Not exercise. But yeah, I just thought I'd grind through it. And then these red spots, over the week, it started hurting more and more, and it spread from one side of my waist to the other. And like after 1 week, I was like, I can't take it anymore. This is like, I have a very high pain threshold, and like, I couldn't take it anymore. It was just way too much, and it was like scaring me now. I went to the hospital, and you know what the doctor told me when I got there in the ER? It was like, John, you know what? You have shingles, and if you didn't come in today, you'd be dead the next day.
Damn.
Yeah,
That's serious.
Yeah, that's what the doctor said. It was like, you'd be dead the next day. I was like, holy crap, you serious, right?
Yeah.
And then they put me under morphine for like a week. I don't know what they put me on. But I was basically knocked out for a whole week. My mom flew out to take care of me. And pretty much, when I was done, I was like, what just happened? And I had to put cream on, I had to apply cream on the spots, the shingles. And pretty much at that time, my wife had to put it on for the back. I mean, when I raised my hand, my arms, I felt so ashamed. It was like I let them down. My daughter was just born, and I couldn't hold her. It hurt too much, right? Can you imagine not being able to hold your daughter? You don't have a kid, but you can't hug the person that's most close to you, kind of thing, right? And so at that time, it was tough. And shingles, it happens because your immune system just drops, right? We all have it from chickenpox, but when your immune system drops to a certain degree, then it comes out. It usually happens to 50-year-olds and above, right? 40, 50-year-olds. I was 28 at the time. I was supposed to be in my prime. Boom. At that time, I realized, you know what? Something needs to change, right? That's when I started, being more mindful of my working habits, being more mindful of this and that. And then after a while, I realized, you know what? I need to work out. I saw your photos. I saw your jacked and juicy. I'm like, I'm Big Mace. I know you don't say that, but I was like, oh, that's Big Mace. If a scrawny kid is bigger, so big now. I was like, you know what? I'm not I'm just gonna ask you, yo, man, what's up? Teach me, right?
Yeah.
And you did, and for that, I'm forever grateful.
I feel like that's kind of one of the major points of where Azurean comes in, right? A lot of people don't know until it's kind of too late.
Yeah.
Right? And I guess the community that you're trying to build out or help
Yeah.
is literally to prevent that from happening, prevent students or even adults, rather than stretching them all the way down to like the last lifeline. It's just kind of cutting it at the root earlier,
Right.
so that people are more aware.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So how has your journey been over the last 3 years? I know like you're doing your business, you're balancing everything out.
Yeah.
Could you share a little bit about, like, I know you're a family man first, right? So
Right.
how do you balance everything?
You gotta set priorities, right? So there's several pillars that's really important. I think having having your goals set out and clearly laid out is very important. So for example, health. Right now, like, in the last 3 years, it was, build, and like get fit, right? Get healthy. And I think I'm in a good place right now. I'm not in the best place, but it's optimal, right? In terms of time usage and so on. Fitness is a marathon, not a sprint.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, and if you're sprinting, you're probably taking drugs. Yeah. Hitting the gym 2 or 3 times a week, doing some weights, a good balance of weights. I added some yoga in. Okay. Because over the summer, when we visited Hong Kong, like I had some shoulder and back. It was pretty tight, right? And so I started turning to yoga, and that's helped a lot. Okay. So I like that solved the problem. Basically, I haven't had that problem. I've been doing yoga for about 6 months now. Right. And it's been helpful. Maybe like once or twice a week. Being more mindful about stretching. That's what Kobe said, right? Like one of the secrets when you're older is just to stretch. Yeah. It's longevity, right? Yeah, longevity, right? Yeah. And so just maintain that pillar for health. Sleep. I checked out Matthew Walker's Why We Sleep. Right? Matthew Walker is a professor at UC Berkeley, and he runs a lab on sleep, right? Sleep science. And and it's you just once you listen to him, it's like, wow, this is so important, right? Sleep is, and the 3 pillars of health, nutrition, sleep, and working out, fitness, right? And then so for nutrition, just count your calories, use MyFitnessPal, right?
Do you find it really hard to keep track?
Especially for Chinese food, yeah, because Chinese food is like chow mein, like throw everything there, like, and then you're just guesstimating, right? Right. So so for Chinese food, it's pretty tough. Western food is pretty straightforward. If you go to restaurants, like 6 ounces of steak is 6 ounces of steak. Right? So for Chinese food, all you can do is guesstimate. Okay. But you preach about flexible dieting. Yeah. And so I do pay attention. Just be a little bit more flexible. So when I first started, I was literally count every carrot I ate, right? Or every ounce of carrot I ate. Right. But now it's just mixed vegetables, approximately 4 ounces. I'm good, right? And that's kind of my approach now. Okay. So that's one pillar, like health, right? And in that pillar, there's 3 sub pillars I gotta maintain. Right. The other one is work. I'm still wrapping up my PhD, so right now, I estimated how much time do I need to finish my PhD. I got 6 months to make some changes to my thesis, right? I passed the defense, but I need 6 months to make some changes. So I estimated, okay, in these 6 months, I need about 3 days a week to do it. And I'll probably complete it in 4 months. Give myself 2 months of buffer, right? So I'm dedicating 3 days a week on my thesis. Okay. And then for my business, it's there's a lot of setting up and developing you do, and a lot of it's just a lot of brainstorming in the back. Talking to people, bouncing ideas off people, trying and seeing what sticks, right? And there's different phases you go through. And so I'm spending 2 days a week on the business. And then meanwhile, prioritizing the family as well during the weekends and also after work hours. I heard Jordan Peterson say this once. And it's success in life is not about mastering one thing and just mastering that, right? Of course it's important to have mastery, but success in life is, a lot of it's defined by, balancing a lot of things and not screwing them up. If you screw up one of those things, all those things, you screw up sleep, boom, all that falls apart. Right. Right? You screw up work, right? You have a wonderful family life. My PhD is awesome. And my health is awesome, right? But I don't work. boom, financially you're dead.
Right.
So success in life is not really defined by mastery of one thing and then compromising others. It's about balancing everything and make sure you don't screw them all up. Meanwhile, focusing on mastering the thing that matters to you.
Sometimes when we think about consulting or finding a coach, it's like we have one problem. I only want to talk to you about this.
Yeah.
That's it, right? But I guess what you're doing is taking a step back actually, and drawing the full picture. So it might be one thing linking to another thing.
Yeah.
And I kind of got that with our call. Do you talk at first about all the encompassing factors to some of the clients that you might have? Like maybe they just come to you with one issue,
right?
But you actually revealed kind of like a big snowball of things accumulating, right? Like, oh, maybe that person, their diet is really bad, or they're not sleeping well enough. Things that you just mentioned. So, do you touch on everything, or do you really just focus in?
Yeah, that's a great question, and to be honest, it's hard to touch on everything. Like a lot of this stuff I'm talking about is accumulation of experience, of reading the literature, reading the science behind it, experimenting with myself.
Right.
And at the end of the day, people turn to you with a pain point, and this is like the sales process, right? You got to identify the pain point, and you got to help them fix that specific pain point. If that person doesn't have you might see there's an issue there. You can try to show it to them, but if they don't feel like there's a pain, there's that issue themselves, number one, they're not gonna be happy. Like they'll turn to you and they'll feel like, okay, you can help me, but they're not gonna be willing. I don't want. It's not all about money, right? But if you're running a business, the financial side is important, right? If they're not gonna be willing to put skin in the game. They're not gonna be like, okay, I'm willing to spend X amount of dollars for you to coach me. And so number one, you can't close the deal, right?
Right.
The other thing is really, even if you help them, they won't feel like you've really delivered a lot of value to them. So they'll be like, okay, he's helped me solve this problem. It wasn't that big of a problem. And at the end of the day, it's like, they go out and they'll talk to other people. It's like, oh, John, he's okay, right? The people that you really, and this is kind of like a business mindset, the people you really want, like that you can really help, are those who actually feel the pain, turn to you, and you're actually able to deliver a lot of value and really help them, right? So it's kind of like I know the Chinese saying, you make a cow go next to the river, but you can't force his head to drink it. Right. It's this kind of this kind of mentality where, the person, like for me, I turned to you, right, because I really felt the pain. I needed help with this. And that's why there are specific coaches for specific things, right? There's business coaches, there are life coaches, there are marriage coaches, there are fitness coaches. There's a coach for everything. And this is only going to keep diversifying, because coaching as an industry really started, 80s, 90s, right? And now with the social media, boom, it blows up even more.
I think what's incredibly useful is the effect that you actually have afterwards. So after we had a quick chat, it opened up a lot of self-reflection, right? And the way that you have a perspective on something is very different. And I'm sure that for you, you live by as an example, and you affect those around you, right? You have kids, you have wife, and your family sees you almost as a role model, and the way that you carry yourself as a person, right? So do you have a piece of advice then for either the new generation, the younger guys, or even people who are around us?
If you got any major hindering issues, just fix that right now, because we all know, everyone's got their own weaknesses, right? Everyone's got their own limitations, and probably one of the most important things is to be true to yourself and honest to yourself. If you got a problem, just admit it. You got a problem. Admit you got a problem and tackle that problem head on. Because otherwise, that problem, if you let it fester, you don't know what it's going to be like cancer. It spreads, right? It's like an addiction, right? If you get addicted to, you know, anything really, like video games, you get addicted to the video games, and you dedicate 50% of your life to playing a video game every day, then what happens? Then you fall behind in your homework. You fall behind in your relationships with your family. You fall behind in your health. You're not sleeping right. You're not eating right.
Definitely not working out.
Definitely not working out. And it's like a cancer. It spreads like its tentacles spreads to everything else and just drags you down. So, like I said, you only need one Achilles heel to bring the whole person down.
Is there one specific thing that you're struggling with at the moment? Well, I mean, like health was one of them before.
Yeah,
It looks
yeah.
like you've like balanced it back out.
To be very honest, right now I'm very grateful because I feel like, you know, my major Achilles heel, which was health, has been fixed. But, you know, after tackling that health bit, sleeping right, a lot of it was just not sleeping right. And then as a result, the stress makes it like much worse, right? And as a result of like, you know, fixing the fitness bit, sleeping right, eating right, you know, not having too many carbs, eating a high protein diet, and you know, you feel full, you don't want to eat more. Like it's just positive that builds on positive and builds on positive, that until you get to a place that you're no longer suffering. But you know, the suffering is a different type. The suffering is, you know, how do you break through? How do you get through to the next level in terms of your business, in terms of, you know, your like, you know, your business research, health, family. Like you're in a stable platform to build something on. Before I was not.
Yeah.
Right? And like a cancer, it's spread everywhere.
That's crazy how something as simple as fitness, just trying to stay active, could turn your life all the way around. You know, when you first came to me, I didn't know the full backstory, right? And literally, you just came and was like, "I want to get fit. You got big muscles. Let's do this." And you know, at that time, I took it in stride. It wasn't like I wasn't gloating or anything. It was literally like just trying to help you out. Because you know, you coached me for so many years playing ball, right?
Which is ironic because, like, you know, you flip it around now. Like now you're coaching me in you know, in weightlifting, right? In other forms of fitness. But back then I was coaching you in basketball. You know, it's just, you know, it's just passing that love around. Before
we end off, I actually have a different question for you. So after this interview, if you were to walk outside and you found a check on the ground for $10 million, what would you do with it?
If I found a check for $10 million, I'd put $9 million and invest it, diversify through a diversified portfolio. You know, when I say diversify, you know, high risk, medium risk, low risk. So high risk would be like stocks. Medium risk would be like mutual funds, and then the low risk would be like GICs or whatever, right? GICs, bonds. So I do that. Put my $9 million in that, so that I know no matter what happens, like whether like if the business goes broke or if like, you know, we have a health issue and I need to throw money at it, you know, there's something there, right? And you know, you gotta live, and I think that's it. And so that $9 million will roll, right? And here's one thing that's, you know, crazy. I heard this recently and on another podcast. I forgot where I heard it. You know, if you're like 18 years old and you spend like you throw something like $300 at this is Gary Vaynerchuk and Tony Robbins. They were this is a video that they were on together. And basically, if you're 18 years old, I mean, if you're 26 years old and you have like you have like what, 26 grand in your in your account, you just put it in there and you just just let it go. Pretty much by the time you retire, you'll have like what, $965,000 or something.
Wow.
By the time you retire. And that's because you start early, and then so all the compound interest just accumulates like crazy, right? If you start when you're 26, you put $300 a month in your bank, and you go until you're 65, you also have around $965,000 in your bank. So if you're like 18, start putting like $300 in your bank. First 8 years of life, and don't put anything else, and you'll get to $1 million by the time you're old and you need to retire, right? But if you're like in your 27, right?
Yeah.
From now until 65, if you put like $300 a month, you'll end up with $1 million. Yeah. So it's that kind of math. So, I'm 36 this year. If I go out and I find $10 million, I'll put it aside, and so that interest will roll, and then the $1 million I'll pay off some student loans, invest it in my company to scale it, and because that'd be great if that actually happened.
All right, guys. Well, that's all the time that we have. But thank you so much, Jon, for coming on.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Yep.